Part 1. A low rumble pushed through my house for the 15th time today. I hate this, I thought, as I curled up in my room in the basement of my parents' home. I've never experienced an earthquake until 4 weeks ago. A 7.7 quake slammed through my town. 2 days later, a 6.9 aftershock hit at 4:35 a.m. I've never been so scared as I was when I felt everything shake. After it happened, I found the National Geological Survey app and installed it on my phone. It sent out notifications every time there was a new event, with the size and location within 50 miles of me. Over the last month, there had been 671 notifications sent. It seemed the ground was moving all the time. According to the app, there was a 1 in 9,000 chance that a follow-up aftershock of 9.0 or above, which is called a city killer, could happen within 7 days of the first quake. I was living in fear and the anxiety was killing me. It was irrational, I know, but I couldn't sleep most nights. I just wanted the shaking to end. It was 11:14 p.m. and I was so tired, but I just couldn't stop my mind from rolling. I heard a notification go off on my phone and I knew what it was. The screen lit. It was a 1.5 magnitude about 19 miles west of me. I felt a small tinge of fear every time I heard my phone go off. I got out of bed, went upstairs to the kitchen to get something to eat. I walked into my living room, sat on the couch and clicked on the flat screen. I scanned the channels and leaned back into my dad's chair. I didn't have to worry about the noise because my parents were out of town on what they call their yearly marriage retreat. I think they loved each other, but I could tell they needed more than a retreat to help them with all their problems. Maybe they were staying together just for me. I don't know. I didn't know how long I was asleep when I heard another large rumble move through the house. The TV flickered and the power went off for what seemed the umpteenth time in the last month. A few seconds later, I heard the notification go off on my phone. A 5.1 magnitude, it was centered just 2 blocks east of my house. I stood up and walked out my front door to see if anyone else was outside. I think everyone but me was just tired of caring about the small shakes, went back to sleep, or didn't even wake up at all. I walked down my driveway and stepped into the street. It was extremely dark because there was a thick cloud cover from a storm that was moving through. It had been raining off and on for days. I took a few more steps and I was standing right in the middle of the road. I lived on a slight hill and my house was right at the crest. I had a good view of my whole town as I looked around. I could see the Quickie Mart at the bottom of the hill and the outside floodlights were on. They must have been running on emergency batteries, I thought. There were 2 sets of lights and the one on the left of the building was almost burned out. It was just flickering. But the lights on the right side were bright enough that I could see a man moving around in the store. He walked around with purpose, stepping in and out of the door and bringing items in. He pulled some firewood bundles in and locked the door. He disappeared as he walked around the back of the counter and reappeared standing in front of the register counting the till. A piece of acoustical tile dropped from the ceiling and hit him right in the face. It must have loosened from all the shaking. He jumped back, picked up the piece and threw it across the store in anger. I could tell he was cursing as he rubbed his head. He finally turned and began counting again. I started to walk back into my house when another rumble started and stopped. Like clockwork, my phone beeped and the screen lit up. I pulled it out of my pocket to see the new event detail. The screen was so bright it really did hurt my eyes. I put my phone back in my pocket and took one last look down the street. What I saw froze me in my tracks. The clerk was standing in front of the till and something began to drop out of the ceiling where the acoustical tile had fallen. It slowly slipped down and suddenly a large black hook, like appendage, unfolded and snapped right through the back of the clerk. His body wrenched, his arms and legs were thrashing back and forth. My heart stopped. I couldn't make a noise. I felt like I was going to pass out. I took a breath and another hook flashed out and hit him right under the chin. He immediately went limp as it pulled him up into the ceiling. I stumbled backwards and he was gone. I pulled my phone out of the pocket and called 911. But who would believe the story, I thought. I hit the keys and the operator picked up. 911, what is your emergency? I started rattling out what I saw, and she hung up on me. I called back and the same woman answered. I told her, do not hang up and listen to what I have to say. She angrily told me this line was for emergencies only, and the line went dead again. I then realized that no one would believe a word I said. I sounded like I was out of my mind. The door slammed behind me as I walked down the hall to my parents' room. My dad had several guns in his closet and he kept behind a false wall. I found them years ago and never let him know. I pulled the wall out and grabbed a 9mm pistol. I put one in the chamber of the 9mm and pushed it quickly into my pants. I replaced the wall and headed towards the front door. I knew I needed to move quickly, so I stopped and shoved 6 shells into the shotgun and left it in the house. I liked the newfound courage I had after the endless shaking. Moving across my lawn, I jumped fence after fence until I was able to look directly into the store. Between the time I went into my house until now, the emergency lights were barely lit. I sat for a few minutes to see if I could see anything. The rain started again. I took a deep breath and I began to move. I caught a glimpse of a large object dragging something away from the back of the building. It reared back, pulled, then stopped and pushed itself along the ground. Reared back, then pulled and pushed again, over and over. I felt that same fear creep up inside me as I felt the first time I felt the quake. I clenched my fist and forced the fear deep down. The creature disappeared behind the auto shop on the west side of the Quickie Mart and was lost in the darkness. I stood up, ran behind the convenience store, and peered around the corner to see what it was. As I looked, I pulled the handgun out of my waistband and raised it up in front of me. For some reason, I started towards the auto shop. My mind was saying no, but my body was saying yes. The closer and closer I got, the more fear started to build in my mind. Then my legs stopped. I was standing out in the open. If it was back there, it could see me. The panic had taken over, and I just couldn't move. I widened my eyes to see in the darkness, and then it happened. I saw something slowly moving towards me. It was dragging itself along with what I could now see were 2 mangled limbs that ended with 2 large bony hooks. I took a few steps back and realized it couldn't move with any speed. It could only drive the hooks into the ground and pull forward. An unexpected shard of lightning lit the sky and I saw its true form. It was bigger than I thought. Its arms had no muscle, but they were filled with black tendons and sinew. The hooks were white, but looked black from the mud it was crawling through. I continued to back up, and it continued to raise and slam its hooks and move towards me. The rain increased and started to come down in sheets. Bolts of lightning ripped through the sky. Thunder rolled through me as I stopped and wiped the rain from my face. I looked through the darkness, and it was gone. How could that be true? I didn't argue with myself. I turned and started to run up the road. I was in full control of my body now, and it was enveloped in fear again. I reached my driveway and took a fast look back. Nothing. I locked every door and every window. I pulled the curtains and shades shut. Maybe it went back to finish off the clerk, I thought. I didn't move for over an hour. I peeked out the front window as the rain, lightning, and thunder continued. With each flash, I could see the whole street. There was nothing but water running like a river down my driveway. I turned in my living room, pressed my back to the wall, pulled my knees to my chest. Where did it go so fast? Where did it go? My arms were so tight around my shins, I finally realized I wasn't breathing. I loosened my hands and took a deep breath. There was no way it was coming after me, I whispered to myself. For a moment, I thought I was in a dream, and I needed to wake up. I pulled my hands down to my face and walked to the kitchen and opened the fridge to find a Coke. I cracked the top and guzzled half the can. I decided to walk down the steps to my room and go to sleep. Whatever it was, it'll be gone in the morning, I thought. Thunder rolled again through my room as I slipped under the covers and pulled my pillow tight to my head. My phone woke me up with the familiar chime on a lighted screen at 2:13 a.m. I picked up the phone, and it wasn't the app warning me of a quake. It was a message from EBS, or the emergency broadcast system, warning everyone to stay in their homes. It didn't give any detail. It just read, "Officials are warning residents to stay at home and shelter in place." I sat up in my bed and I grabbed some Advil. My head and neck were aching. I swallowed 4 pills with no water and laid back down. Lightning started to strike over and over again. It was as if there were no breaks between the strikes. My window wells looked like they were lit up with LEDs. The thunder started to move in. Between the constant lightning and thunder, my room revealed all of its secret shadows and its hiding places. I pulled on my neck and tried to stretch the headache away. I noticed I was biting down hard and my jaw was locked. With a shallow breath, I sat up on the edge of my bed. I reached for my phone and suddenly my whole room slammed, to one side and then to the other. All I heard were large explosions. The jolts kept coming. I fell forward. I was being thrown around like a rag doll in the quake. My phone bounced off the wall and landed right in front of me. There was a small pause. I grabbed my phone and clambered to my feet and started to run up the stairs. As I reached the top, I was thrown back as the house bounced straight up and slammed straight down. I landed on my back and a shearing pain moved up the left side of my body. My ribs were broken and my breath was gone. Everything was crumbling. I could hear the cupboards falling from the kitchen walls. Plates were breaking. I could barely stand. I held my ribs and made it to the kitchen. I watched the refrigerator bounce across the room and run through the island of the kitchen and smash into the table. The refrigerator door had broken off and the contents were everywhere. Everything was moving, left and right, up and down. The lightning and thunder cracked over and over. The rain was still pounding down on the house. I heard a giant explosion and the floor pushed up and the house shifted off its foundation. I realized I was the epicenter of the quake. The windows started to blow out. The storm screamed through the entire house. Rain was moving sideways as I crawled along the floor to see if I could reach the front door. I pushed into the living room and my mother's curio cabinet started to fall. I tried to roll out of the way, but it pinned me right to the wall. The earth-moving jolts continued. The cabinet slammed me against the wall over and over. Blood started to stain my eyes. I involuntarily started to scream in fear. My scream stopped as the pain tore through my ribcage. I cleared my eyes. I tried to unpin myself. Then I heard another large boom and the ground shifted again. The cabinet rolled over my leg as it slid to the other side of the room. In full panic, I rushed to my feet and fell immediately. My knee was dislocated. In desperation, I turned on my stomach, reached out one arm, pressed it to the floor, and pulled myself forward. I pushed my other hand out, pulled myself forward, reaching and moving, reaching and moving. My hand felt the wall, and I looked up. It was the large plate glass window that ran across the front of my house. I don't know how it wasn't broken, but it wasn't. All at once, the ground stopped. I rolled over on my back and noticed the rain, lightning, and thunder had also moved away. Silence. Silence took over all at once. My body was numb. The pain seemed like a distant sunset as the night removed the light. The darkness enveloped me, and I fell into the void. Part 2. I opened my eyes, and it was still dark. I had no frame of reference to what time it was. I reached up to grab the windowsill and tried to stand. I was able to pull myself to my feet and stood on my one good leg. I reached down and slammed my fist into my knee, and it popped back in place. I screamed again from the pain. Taking a deep breath, I surveyed the room. It was broken in every way. The floor in the kitchen was split right down the middle. The table and chairs were in the basement. All of the walls had tears and cracks everywhere. There wasn't anything that was in order. Entropy had taken its full sway on my home. My mind, though still racing in panic, started to calm. The worst was over, I hoped. I took another deep breath, turned around and looked through the window into the front of the yard. I wanted to see the damage to the street. As my eyes focused, my heart exploded. There it was. It was crawling up my driveway. I saw its arm swing out and drive the hook into the cement and pull itself forward. My limbs stiffened. I stepped back. My foot hit some debris and it made the slightest noise as his hook was slamming down to crush the cement, and it stopped. A full minute went by. I didn't move. No sound. It didn't move. The rain started again. I was hoping the water would wash whatever I was looking at away, but I knew that was never going to happen. A thick bolt of lightning struck the middle of the street, and it lit everything around as bright as the noonday sun. I raised my hand to my eyes, and a clash of thunder shook the house. As I pulled my hands away from my eyes, it shifted. It was tracking up the driveway, and now it was moving right at me. It saw me. It saw me. I dropped to the floor and twisted my way into the kitchen. I had to stop and slip around the large hole in the floor. My eyes were searching for the shotgun. It had fallen off the counter and was wedged between the broken wall and the floorboards. I pushed the wall and it wouldn't budge. My heart started to race and I could feel the energy surge. I leaned on the wall and lifted with all my might. The wall tipped and I pulled out the gun. Where do I go? Where do I go? I said in my mind. I hobbled down the stairs back into my room. The entrance wall held the staircase that led to my room. I leaned back into the far corner and hid in a shadow. I heard a loud scraping on the foundation as it looked for a way in. Across from me, one of my window wells went dark. The window shattered as the hooked arm pulled in and out, searching for me. It moved down the outside of the house and made it to the back door. I heard the door being pulled off the hinges as it entered. It was at the top of the stairs. I thought I heard it breathing. They were long, deep breaths, I thought. I looked down and my hands were shaking uncontrollably. I closed my eyes and tried to block out the pounding of the rain. I heard it start to crawl down the stairs. The breathing became louder and louder as it kept moving. I pointed the gun at the wall and pulled the trigger. My ears were ringing and there was a thick dust in the air as it blew a hole in the sheetrock. I waited. No sound. I must have gotten it right. Only seconds went by and I heard a long, deep breath again. The scraping on the wall started to move quicker and quicker. I fired again and again. I pointed the gun to the entrance of my room and squoze off another round. It blew the frame completely off the left side of my door. Nothing could live through that, I thought. Again, no sound. I squinted my eyes to see if there was anything moving. I knew I only had 2 shots left. If I missed, I was dead. As I strained to look, I heard the familiar loud rumbling, and the house started to slam up and down more violently than before. The foundation sheared and started to open up. The walls were moving in every direction. The ceiling started to fall apart. And suddenly, it was as if I was living in slow motion. I saw a white bony hook sink deep into the jolting floor as it pulled itself into my room. Another hook slammed into the ground. It was in my room. I could see it. I lowered the gun and let one of my final 2 rounds go. The ground was moving so hard, I thought I missed it, but I didn't. I saw one of the hooks slide across the floor. Black fluid was squirting out of its body. Its blood was covering all the walls as the earth continued to rock the house. It reared up and let out a high-pitched scream. I dropped the gun and covered my ears. The sound was so loud I thought my head was going to explode. The screaming stopped. The room went still. I felt a warm, rancid breath across my face. I opened my eyes just in time to see black ooze hit my shoulder. It was thick like tar and reeked like rotten fish. I was paralyzed with fear. Nothing would move on my body. There was no face to the creature. I could just feel its breathing through the darkness. Again, in slow motion, I watched as the other arm raised. It slammed down. I heard a powerful thud as it missed its mark. There must have been some ancient survival mechanism in my body as my muscles twitched and shifted me to the left unconsciously. Suddenly, I was in control again. It raised its arms and started to screech even louder than before. I felt the shotgun in my hand. I pointed and fired. A mass of black fluid drenched my whole body. My legs were pinned under the creature. I pulled myself out, fell back into the hallway, and looked. The smell made me gag, so I started to wheeze with short breaths. I sat there for what felt like forever. It was dead, and I was alive. But I wanted to make sure it was dead. I made my way out to our shed and pulled out a 3-gallon jug of gasoline. I emptied it on the creature from the kitchen. I pulled out an old wick lighter that my grandfather had given me before he died. I sparked the wick and threw it into the hole. The rush of wind pushed back as the gasoline did its job. I stepped outside and watched the house burn. I heard the blaring sounds of sirens in the distance. Then I felt a vibration and heard a notification bell on my phone, and it lit up in my pocket. It was a 3.1 magnitude quake, 7 miles east of my house. Sometimes the earth moves at night.